I do not think that private equity should own all of our businesses. The idea is, what would it look like if we took the practices, secrets, and processes that private equity uses and apply them individually? Could we do that? And at worst, you guys are gatekeeping and you don't want normal people to know that they could own business. And at best, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So that industry, and I think that was some of our best performing assets were actually the very, very niche, obviously.
Well, Codie, thank you for coming on this show today. I feel like every time I turn my YouTube or Instagram or Twitter on, I see Alex Hermosi, Layla Hermosi, Chris Williamson, Stephen Bartlett, and you. So you're in some really solid company out there.
They are all buddies, and I think highly of all of them. So that's fun.
Now, how many companies are you operating right
Well, I only operate one,
now? Right.
Contrarian Thinking. So that's the one that I'm still CEO of and I run. I'm sitting in the headquarters here. That's our media company and education company where we teach people to buy and sell small businesses. And then as far as our portfolios, we have 30 companies on the venture side, and I believe we have 26 companies now on the holding company side.
You guys have grown quickly, right?
We have. We're working at it, that's for sure.
Well, let's do a quick introduction. I want to dive right in because a lot of my viewers, we've got a lot of people that are interested in business. A lot of them are real estate investors. So I want to do a little bit of a combination of the two today. But let's talk about your experience. I have to put glasses on these days. It's not like it used to be.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Codie's the founder and CEO of Contrarian Thinking and Financial Advice Enterprise with over 2.5 million subscribers. She is also the co-founder of Unconventional Acquisition. She is one of the world's leading small business experts. Today, she will reveal the deal-making framework she used to build her own nine-figure holding company. She also has a new book coming out called Main Street Millionaire: How to Make Extraordinary Wealth Buying Ordinary Businesses. And that's really your core is what you look for is, right? Is I think you call them boring businesses.
Yeah, that's right. We call them tongue in cheek. They're not boring, but they're all around us. And I think we were told that they were not the place that you made money. So we call them Main Street businesses or boring businesses. Yep.
Yeah. Well, watching some of your videos, it got me looking. So I ran across a couple articles I thought were very interesting. It said companies that specialize in home services like HVAC and electrical and plumbing companies are taking 6- and 7-figure paydays from private equity investors who see media returns in the trades. The Wall Street Journal reports nearly 800 of these skilled trade businesses have been purchased by private equity investors in 2022. And PitchBook says that's likely a low number. It's probably higher than that.
You know what? You're going to have to send me those numbers because my whole mission is for that to not happen.
Right. Yeah. You need the competition.
I do not think that private equity should own all of our businesses in this country or anywhere else. And so my idea, I started in private equity and finance and big financial institutions, and I own a bunch of businesses. But at some point, let's call it 2.5 years ago, I realized that if I kept on the same path of just acquiring bigger and bigger and more companies, then I would be no better than those guys. And I don't know about you, but you go into a private equity bought company, you feel it. You feel it. Like the soul is gone. And it's not for all private equity companies. Like in any industry, they're good, but like any industry, their incentives matter. And the incentive is financial maximization within a short 3 to 7 year time frame in order to turn around for shareholder value and likely resell to another private equity company or potentially take public. And I don't think that we want our coffee shops and our local corner stores and the people that come and take care of our lawns to be owned by private equity everywhere. I think they should have a place in the economy, but they shouldn't own everything. And so Main Street Millionaire, the book, the idea is, what would it look like if we took the practices, secrets, and processes that private equity uses and apply them individually? Could we do that? And that's what we do in our businesses. Like we own, well, you can see it behind me here. This is Pink's, one of our painting companies. And for a very specific reason, we are a co-owner of a very big franchise because when I was looking at this, I was like, we could go buy a bunch of these. We've owned a bunch of these before. We could just roll them up. And then I was like, but then all of the wealth creation is centered at the top. And I don't know if we'll be successful at it, but the goal is that with our franchises, we just have more equalization of returns. So more people get to make money together. And I just think it's a better model. Then at some point, you're like, how much money do I need to make? Like, can't we, can't we have impact and cash?
Right. Well, private equity, it's a tough go. A lot of smaller operators, they just wouldn't be able to put out the constant grind. It'd be very, very hard. So I'm thankful that there's people like you out there. They're doing investing. There's one other article I want to read to you. It was a recent study that Harris Poll on behalf of Intuit Credit Karma revealed that 50% of Gen Z and 42% of millennials plan to move into so-called blue-collar job like welding, plumbing, or electrical work as generative AI thrust itself into more businesses. 66% of Americans believe that trade jobs have more security than corporate ones.
Yeah. What a turn, right?
Isn't it?
Yeah,
I was in shock when I read these.
when I started talking about Main Street businesses, the commentary in response was largely, you don't know what you're talking about. You've
Right.
never owned a train business. This is so hard. If normal people did this, they could never make any money. And I said, at worst, you guys are gatekeeping and you don't want normal people to know that they could own business. And at best, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. These businesses, like any, oh, celebration. These businesses, like any business, are hard. Every business is hard. You're in real estate, you know that. Massively volatile business. And yet, they are much quote unquote easier in the terms of likely to succeed than a SaaS company. Like if you can go build a great software as a service company with recurring revenue, low operating expense, low capex, low churn, then you should absolutely go build a SaaS company. Don't buy a laundromat,
Right.
of course. But
Right.
most people are not going to do that. And so for most of us normal humans, we could actually handle owning a landscaping company or owning a laundromat or a car wash. Like it is not rocket science. It is hard, but it is relatively simplistic. And so I really hate when people try to tell others that they're not capable. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I always love to ask them back, okay, amazing. You say it's really hard to own a business or run a small business or buy a small business. Did you go back and become an employee? Oh, you didn't? Well, then what are we talking about? It's
Right.
hard, but it's worth it. So the interesting part about the trades and youth these days that I find fascinating is they're waking up to it. I think there was a turning point about 5 years ago for the first time ever that university wages crossed over university prices crossed over the decline in salary increases after universities. So much to say that right now today, it costs you 3 to 4x what your parents paid to go to university.
Oh yeah.
And simultaneously, back then, you used to have an increase of your salary of anywhere from 30 to 50%, depending on the sector, if you went to university. It was a material benefit for you to go to university. Today, it is much more expensive. And also, you do not have as much of a salary increase. And so, because of that, I think the youth is like, what are we doing here? You're going to give me a university degree that I can't ever get out from underneath because it's unforgivable. And you're also going to give me a university degree that teaches me what to think, not how to think. And you don't make me more money. So I think no doubt you're going to see more and more people go into the trades and take control of their own future. It's not perfect. There's many downsides to everything, but it is not anathema like it used to be.
Right. I was watching a video with you a while ago, and you're the one that really kind of made me start looking into this. I'm like, she might be onto something here because AI is going to really change the way a lot of things done. I called my uncle, it's an electrician. He goes, "Oh, absolutely, Joe," because we've got younger people that are calling me and saying, "Hey, can I mentor under you even?" And he said and this is in a smaller town in Nebraska, and so they're seeing that there's going to be real opportunity here. And so I think you were spot on then.
Well, I
Uh,
love that you say that and share those stories because, I think the generation that's a little bit below me, let's
mhm.
say, um, I think they were sold a real bag of goods. And, for the first time ever, that generation is making less than their parents at the same age on a inflation adjusted basis. So typically at this age range, they'd be making more. We've had a lovely progress as society between the, agricultural revolution, industrial revolution. Then we had the internet revolution, and we've continued to provide more and more for our youth. And I think right now that's not the case. So we've got an angry youth, and we can feel it. You and I feel it.
Oh
We
yeah.
feel it in things that we think are weird. It's like, why are you quiet quitting? That's not going to help you. Like, why
Right.
are you,
Yeah.
why are you dyeing your hair purple? What does that do for anybody? Like, I feel like those things are weird, but it's because
Right.
they're angry about these things.
Mhm.
They're just not old enough to fully express it yet. And then simultaneously, we know at the other end of the curve, we've got baby boomers who are a little angry too. They got 90% of their wealth tied up in their small business, and their kids don't want to take over their business.
Yeah.
Their kids maybe don't live in their town anymore, increasingly, or their kids are unskilled to take over their business.
Mhm.
And so they're stuck with their biggest asset, unsure of how to sell it. And maybe they don't even think the asset is sellable. And so they're planning on running it until they die. And so, like, they're a little angry too. And
Yeah.
my hope is, like, what if the two generations could actually come together from this? Like, right now, it's, oh, baby boomers are dumb from the youth. Oh,
Yeah.
young kids are idiots from the
Oh yeah.
boomers. It's like, what if you guys are the solution to each other's problems, actually?
Well, now you're just talking sense. I mean, why would you do that? It just seems like, I'm in commercial real estate here in Los Angeles, and the average age it varies. It's 55 to 62, right? And so if the older generation, we got to figure out how to get a younger generation in here. AI is actually assisting that. They're finding more interest in it. But we're finding the companies that are embracing the older generation is actually listening to the younger generation. They're bringing up the AI, and that older generation, like, oh yeah, this is interesting, and I can see. But your point is right on. The two getting together and helping each other out. The older people with their experience, younger people with their technology, marrying that, you've got a winning proposition there.
Well, I think it's, one of the cool parts about commercial real estate, I think, is like for those of you guys that have really been in it for a minute, my dad is a commercial realtor, and he was also a small business owner. I think what's interesting is you guys understand deal making because your deals are never straightforward. Unlike
Right.
residential real estate, where you can have like contractually pretty normalized exchange, you don't have it. So you
Right.
already understand what we teach in like chapter 7 of the book, right? Which is how
Right.
do we negotiate a deal where nobody feels sad or mad, or maybe sometimes they do, but we work through it professionally. Um, and the other thing that I think commercial real estate people really understand is it's not abnormal to buy things using varying financing structures. Like
Right.
that's like, of course, you're never going to go buy a business with $20 million cash unless you have hundreds of millions of dollars of cash. So on a percentage basis, you're always going to use smart financing. Like you guys have understood this all from commercial real estate. And I don't think a lot of people understand that commercial realtors also do business deals. Because often, what are you doing? You're selling the real estate, but the real estate is getting sold because the business owner doesn't
Mhm.
want to run that business anymore. So it might be a twofer. So, in our community, we have our contrarian community where we teach people to buy and sell businesses. And my dad's in it as one of our facilitators. And we have these facilitators who have all these specialties. So his is commercial real estate. We have another guy that's a roll-up specialist, another guy that's a turnaround specialist. And what's so interesting is people don't realize how important like the leases are when you buy a
Mhm.
small business. You guys are
Yeah.
often one of the biggest expenses in a small
Yep.
business. It's the lease. And
Yep.
so I think real estate's starting to come around as a sector to business acquisition when it felt like before they almost thought it was a competition. It was like you either buy businesses or you buy real estate and they're not
Right.
the same, and real estate's easier and it's better taxes. And so why would you do this? It's like, you guys, it's all the same. It's all deals, just like different types of assets.
Yep. Now, have any of your acquisitions, did you buy a lot of the reason was the real estate, or do you focus strictly on the business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have a big plot of land with like a business on it that's kind of glorified like agriculture, a little bit of cattle ranching,
Okay.
and like a hunting licensing
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
business.
Yep.
So it's not very big from a revenue perspective,
Right.
but we bought the land plus the tax write-offs for that business.
Mhm.
And we'll eventually build a bigger business on it. But that's one. I mean, that one was like 90%, real estate basically
Right.
for that transaction. And then we've bought a couple of pieces of real estate that had some sort of business attached to them. Like we bought a couple Airbnb businesses that were already running as businesses, but we bought the real estate too, but we really bought it for the cash flow.
Right.
Uh, and then increasingly though, I've stayed out of commercial real estate probably for the past 4 or 5 years. It just in the markets that I was in, it was booming. I
Sure.
mean, Austin, like
Yep.
booming, Phoenix,
Yeah.
booming,
Yeah.
California, I left, so like
Yeah.
so I wasn't buying commercial real estate, but I'd be curious your take. I'm starting to look at it. Like we're looking at some commercial real estate and starting to put in some offers, that are below market. And I'm curious. I think there seems to be like Austin's really starting to come back down again.
Yeah. It's getting a little more realistic. We've got, there was, I don't know if you know the way McDonald's, when they got started, they'd buy the real estate, do the property, sell the real estate, they franchisee, then they take the money they got from the equity of the real estate, then buy another business. Is that a model that you guys are considering down the road?
We did that back when we were buying cannabis companies. We did a bunch of
Oh, did
sale
you?
leasebacks. Yeah.
Yep. Sale
Um,
leasebacks. Yeah.
yeah, it was very standard in that industry because money was impossible to get given the
Yeah.
federal categorization. You probably see a ton of that in California.
Yeah.
So I would say like almost every one of our cannabis deals, which I think we did 65, 66 deals or something like that. If
Ooh.
if it was a brick and mortar business had some
Right.
component of that. Well, I mean, almost all of them. Maybe we bought a couple online businesses that didn't, but you would need a warehouse space, but nobody would let you lease one. So you had to
Right.
buy your
Mhm.
so that industry, and I think that was some of our best performing assets were actually the debt portfolio
Mhm.
in the cannabis space,
Yeah.
um, because it doesn't have the negative tax consequences of
Right.
the actual anything that touches the flower or the plant.
Right.
Um, very, very niche, obviously, but I think there are a lot of instances where that makes sense. We're actually looking at a portfolio company right now to invest in at Contrarian Thinking Capital that does sale leasebacks for small businesses at scale.
Okay.
And I think you're right that that is going to be a really interesting model going
Mhm.
forward because capital's like the number two reason businesses die, right? No product
Right.
market fit. And then second is capital. And if we
Yeah.
can unlock the value of the real estate, and if you're smart enough to know that your business can make 20% per year instead of, you know, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6%, then you're probably smart to
Yeah.
not own the real estate.
Yep, I agree. I want to get on to acquiring property. So now, when your acquisition strategy when you started out is obviously completely different now than it was when you started out. How has that evolved?
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about it for people like you, it's different. Like if you've done deals before,
Mhm.
um, I don't think you should start the way that I did. A lot of the
Right.
way that I speak is to normalize it broadly, right? It's
Yeah.
like I want to democratize access to ownership. And in order to do that, we simplify, right? So I talk a
Right.
lot about the first laundromat deal I did and how we bought it for $100,000 and it did $67,000 a year in profit. And people go, that's a terrible deal, or that deal never happened, or that's a great deal. It's too good of a deal. Like it's always something. And in retrospect, that's actually not a very good deal. Like that deal for me today would be a tough deal. It's
Right.
like, oh man, you only make 67K and you're paid 67K to run a laundromat. That would not be a good deal for me today. But when I was starting, it was a great deal because 100K wouldn't bankrupt me. I could figure out how to run it. I had somebody else in there who could run the day to day and I could figure out the overall business. I could scale it. It was simple. It wasn't intimidating to me and it was profitable. And I got my money back pretty quickly because I didn't want it sitting out there for 5 years. Um, so that was actually a good deal for me. And that's why like we kind of obsess on I think the most important chapter in the book is chapter 2, which is the right fit business. It's like, how
Mm.
do you find the business that is right for you? Like everybody on the internet's so concerned with what is the right deal? Like, is this a good deal? Is it a bad deal? It's like, no. Is it good for you? I mean, you know
Right.
this all too well. One piece of real estate, somebody's literally like, please sell this piece of shit. And somebody else says, oh, that's perfect. I need to buy that. That's exactly what I
Mhm.
need. And it's
Yeah.
the same with businesses. So in the beginning, we started small because if your first deal is awful, you'll never do another deal. You'll think deals are bad, not that you just weren't good your first deal. And then as we get bigger, it looks a lot different. Now we have to buy businesses that are doing at least tens of millions of dollars in revenue. We need to have deals that make us millions of dollars a year in profit in order for it to make sense for us. But it all started with like, hey, could I maybe make a few tens of thousands of dollars on the side while I'm still working?
Yeah. How did you find your first businesses?
Yeah. Well, I had two kind of failures before I got to my little laundromat. I bought one business, which was a cross-border consulting business, which sounds fancy. It wasn't. It was like a glorified individual consultant, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I kind of bought his business, structured it so that I could earn into it. And if he brought in more, we made more. I had another business that was called Refined, that was a styling marketplace. And I sort of bought some of my stylists' individual businesses so that they could come on and I would take a cut and I would source people to them. So those were my first two, and they weren't very good, but they were low risk. And then I got to my
Yeah.
laundromat. And that one came to me because I found my operator first. I typically find my operators before I find businesses. And I was running around doing business and finance at this point. And so I didn't even want my bosses to know, I didn't want them to think I was distracted.
Side job.
Yeah, it was 1,000% a side job. Total, like, oh man, get me out of here eventually. But I
Yeah.
was a wuss, so I didn't just leave. And so that first one came to me because of my operator. And then two more came from the same operator. And then I started to realize, oh, this is a thing we could do. At which point I started to seek out the businesses.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like right now, I mean, if you're into restaurants, if I got a bunch of restaurants for you here in Los Angeles right now, have you ever done a restaurant?
Yeah, we own part of a restaurant portfolio group here
Okay.
that owns a restaurant called The Well, which is a
Mhm.
series of like health restaurants.
Okay.
Um, and they also own a couple clubs, like the one's called Devil May Care. Anyway, so we own a part of that company here. And then back in the day, I did some e-commerce and some CPG, consumer packaged good food companies.
Okay.
Um, but besides that, restaurants are hard. I haven't
Yeah.
I haven't spent a lot of time there unless I had a top tier operator, which Jack is, because I think it's just a harder business. You have to be better.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of them in LA coming on the market right now. Well, they're not on the market. We've got a few on the market, but a lot of pocket listings right now because
What do you
it's
think's
just
going on?
such a hard thing to operate. And, but on the other side of that, if you're a good operator, there's a lot of great opportunity here right now. You can get a prime location, so
Does the business come with the real
yeah,
estate?
yeah, and
Yeah.
almost every one of them, people are just wanting out. The business is going to stay there. We've got one that was open for 6 months, and they
Wow.
just were bad. They got celebrities involved, and you know how that goes, right?
Oh, not good. Yeah,
Yeah, too
no.
many Chiefs, not enough Indians, and so it wasn't really a good thing. But if I'm getting started in looking for my first business, Cody, what should I really be looking for right now?
Yeah. Well, first you have to obsess on what do you want? This is the
Right.
thing most people won't tell you. So you've already opened your eyes a little bit. This would be like
Mhm.
chapter one in the book, which is there's a real opportunity here. Do you believe Joe and I? Do you think it's worthwhile? Do you really think this is a generational wealth creation event? Is this a good game to play? Because I think that's what you should always ask. It's like you have all the games that you could play. You could play real estate, you could play banking, you could play art, whatever. Is this the game that you want to play? And I think this is a really good game for people who want to make money, like money is first and foremost, and who like doing deals and who want to operate a business or like the game of business. If you like those three things, then I think business buying could be for you. Um, Now, I think where most people lose is they go, oh, Joe buys and sells restaurants. So I should buy and sell restaurants. And I refuse to do that. It would be a lot easier. We'd have a lot more lead magnets. We'd get way more followers if I just said, here are the top 50 businesses to buy, stacked ranked. Here's the business you should buy today. But I don't think that's true, because I would hate owning a restaurant. But I have a friend, Donald Park, who runs Iconic Partners, and he's one of the best restaurant operators out there. He runs Delilah, and got a bunch of members clubs in LA and Miami and Vegas, and he's a stud. They're great operators.
Right.
And so for him, it's the perfect fit business. So I think the question people need to ask themselves is, really, we have something called a deal box, which you know all about. But so it basically is, it's like your Tinder profile, right? So it's, who am I looking for? What do I want? And when I see it, will I know it? And so this is in Tinder, it's like a woman, maybe, age range, located here,
Right.
kids, no kids, wants kids, no kids. In the deal box, we have the same thing, except it's location. How much revenue are we going to get? How much profit? What industries are interesting? Do I want an owner operator business, or do I want an owner investor business? And so once you nail that deal box, then you can get into, okay, now I know what I want. What is out there on the market that could be reasonably priced and fit in my deal box?
Perfect. Now the hard one, what should I be watching out for?
Yeah.
What are the
Red
red
flag.
flags I should be looking for? Yeah.
So I think there are many red flags in businesses, but let's go with my top 5 red flags in a business.
Mhm.
Number 1 red flag is the business hasn't existed long enough. If the business hasn't been around at least 3 to 5 years and you've never run a business before, I say pass, because the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, and you don't have enough data one way or the other. So no new businesses. Number 2, profitable businesses. Next red flag is, we're not making money now, but we might in the future. We could potentially, if you did this, here's all the opportunity set. Nope, pass on that business. If it's not profitable, we're not doing it. 3, if the business is something you can't explain to your grandma, to your mom, to your 10-year-old kid, it's a pass. For your first business, we don't want complicated businesses. I don't want intellectual property rights and AI. I want very simplistic, because business is hard enough without you having to learn an entirely new industry. The next one is financial matchup. So how much does the tax return match up with the P&L, the profit and loss statement? There's gonna be variance on those. There always is, but how comfortable can you get with that? And is there way too much where the purchase price just makes no sense with what they've made historically? And then the last one is, I truly believe you can't do a good deal with a bad dude, especially on your first deal. So like, as you get more tenured, you might be able to say, oh, this is a bad dude, but like, this is a great asset and I know how to protect myself and move around, etc. In the beginning, no. And so I don't do deals with bad guys. So really do diligence in who the owner of the business is, because they're transferring their history, their trust or lack thereof to you when you buy. And so
Yeah.
those are my top 5.
The one about sitting down with the financials and how there being differences, that's common, as you said. And communication, a lot of that can be eliminated with the owner of the building or owner of the proper business. And we do it pretty regularly. And we don't sell a lot of businesses. We just have had a lot lately that have been coming on here in the Los Angeles market. So I've been getting back into it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the some of the reason for that might be you're in an interesting market for many ways, but also, I mean, we had the highest level of bankruptcies last year than since the 2008 crisis. We are
Right.
on pace to have a higher degree of bankruptcies this year than last year. We have had more business closures last year than during COVID. We have had a massive amount of, I'm sorry, than since pre-COVID. COVID was worse. We have also seen an exodus from California. Now, I don't know about the demographics specifically in LA. That might not be the case. You would know better than I have.
I think
But we
you're
have
right
seen,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think some of this is a byproduct of regulation inside of California, and so people leaving. But on the flip side, contrarian bets are how big, huge dollars are made. And so I wouldn't bet against LA and San Francisco super long term. especially at much discounted rates. I have a friend who bought a business in, bought a building in San Francisco and the building was $155 million when they bought it. They just sold that business for $50 million. And if I had heard that deal, I would have gotten together 50 million bucks to buy
Oh
that.
yeah.
And I'm not even like pro San Francisco on where it's going right now. Just
Right.
that kind of discount is wild. And
Yeah.
so, you know, as opposed to Texas, where we've only seen like a slight decrease in residential and basically no decrease really in commercial that we can see yet. You probably can see behind the scenes more. Um, but that's my take.
Yeah. The one thing that you have to really think about. So cities here in LA, a few of them have adopted a $20 an hour minimum wage.
Oof.
Yeah. And so we've got a few restaurants in a few of those cities. That's a lot of the main reason. It's that, and the real estate is still expensive here, the lease rates. So you've got to really understand what's going on in the city that you're looking at a business to, city and county and state.
That is such a great point. And the point on minimum wage is a tough one, right? Because if you
Yeah.
think about it at face value, who doesn't want people to make more when they are at the bottom of the wage range? Like,
Yeah.
what kind of monster doesn't want that? Of course we want it. But the problem is that politicians are so bad at looking at second and third order effects and expressing them. And so, the byproduct or what happens, when you cut a piece of meat is there's blood that comes out of the meat. And if you know that, you put down a cutting board, right? And then you catch the blood, and it's no big deal. You cut the meat, you catch the blood, and then you wash it off. If you don't think about the second and third order effects, then it gets all over your countertop and all over yourself. And I think that's what happens with politicians a lot. They go to cut the meat and they don't think at all about the blood. And what happens in this case is there's a lot of blood from minimum wage increase, which is these people don't realize that small businesses run on average on a 10 to 15% profit margin, which
Yeah.
is wild. So if you only have 10 or 15% profit for all your work, and your second biggest cost, probably right after, maybe third, I would guess real estate's up there, food costs are up there, and then labor. So labor's somewhere in the top three,
And in
right?
California, Cody, we got insurance.
Oh,
That's
and
expensive. Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insurance here is pretty expensive.
I wonder what I would assume that was fourth, but I don't actually know.
But
Um,
yeah.
but if you increase like the second or third biggest line item expense, then you might just take away all profit.
Mhm.
And if that happens, then not only can you not run a business profitably anymore, all those people they're out of a job. And
Yeah.
then, and it's not because somebody's rich and greedy, it's because the business runs out of money. It's math. And I think it's awful that politicians don't explain that to people.
I know. We're seeing it. We've passed these minimum wage laws, and restaurant or businesses have closed, and a lot of restaurants are really looking at AI. And so you've got AI, these robots flipping burgers, making fries. People are getting laid off. This one of the large franchisor up in, I think it was for McDonald's up in San Francisco area, closed this big location that everybody liked. I can't afford it between crime and so there's a lot you have to take a look at. So a lot of those employees are now unemployed. And so where something like what you're doing and educating these people on how to buy these businesses, I think it's going to create a lot of entrepreneurs.
I think so too.
There's
I think
going to
so
be a
too.
need to be an entrepreneur. And so you want to find some place that you can really get educated. And I think your book,
Yeah.
which by the way, I'm going to post your book on my other side, website, and I'm going to
Hey.
put a link down below. So everybody's going to be able to go find it.
Love.
On your first few deals, this is something I ran into recently.
Hmm.
It was a personal guarantee on a lease.
Yeah.
Did you personally guarantee your first few leases?
No, I didn't.
How did you get
But
around that?
yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think it is totally reasonable for the seller of a business to want a personal guarantee
Yeah.
and for that transaction to say, hey, we want you to have some risk in the game here. And you can't just come in and buy a business for $0 down and zero personal guarantees and in 30 days, and you've never run a business before. That doesn't sound very reasonable.
Right.
And I don't think it is. The reason that I didn't for some of my first few deals is I had been in finance for a long time. So I found businesses, especially that laundromat business, which was the only one of those first three deals I did that had real estate attached to it, where the owner really needed to get out. The owner wanted to be out of the business, didn't want to run it day to day. And so I had a lot of negotiating power where I basically wanted them to stay on board with it. I had my dad, who understands commercial real estate, help me communicate with them what that means, help me kind of finesse and finagle the deal. And so it was a lot more work to close that deal. Probably not worth it from a time perspective. Actually, I should have just personal guaranteed the thing. But
Yeah.
back then I was so risk averse and scared and I didn't know. So I was aggressive on negotiating it. Today, I think there's so many ways to diversify that risk. And so we teach 21 different ways to finance a deal, so to get money for a deal. But I think that I also try to tell people, like, one, I think your bank account is a reflection of the level of risk you're willing to take. And so I do think it is a good thing for people to learn as much as they can and then take calculated risks on themselves. So I'm not like anti personal guarantee. The only
Right.
thing I'm anti personal guarantee on is like, don't mortgage your house to buy a business. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Buy a business with like capital that you have. And if you don't
Yeah.
have capital, get investors because they won't bankrupt themselves in order to get a deal done. And if you can't get investors, then work with the owner of the small business in order to create a deal that is a win-win. And or break up the deal. Get somebody to back the real estate and get somebody to back the business acquisition. So there's lots of ways to do it. But I put that caveat out there because even though my story is that I was pretty lucky and all that to not get personal guarantees up front, I don't think that's always necessary or reasonable.
You're going to be a little different. Coming with your Wall Street background, you've got a lot of experience in negotiations, and your average person coming off the street isn't going to have the knowledge that you had. So it's a point I wanted to make sure we discussed. How often did you use seller financing?
I mean, a lot. I mean,
Did you?
60% of all deals get done with seller financing. We've taught 3,000 people how to buy a business. They've bought cumulative $360 million in business transactions that we can track. So like they actually give us the PPM for the
Right.
business. Um, so I can't even imagine what that is in total across social media and ones that don't report out to us. And I would say of those deals, probably 80% of them have some version of seller financing. Whether that is 100% seller financing totally differs across the board.
Yeah.
We've had some individuals that have had a lot of luck with straight up seller financing, but it meant that they had to, you either pay for the pain up front or you pay for the pain long term. Up
That's
front,
true. Yeah.
Upfront would mean, you get to know the seller, you do free work for the seller, you engage with them a lot, you find the right seller at the right moment and the right time, you do a ton of work up front, and you find the perfect seller. And we have like a checklist, like 13 things that is a seller financing avatar, like an owner that really would be incentivized to do seller financing. And you could do all of that, or you could do the deal quickly and use traditional financing methods and pay for it long term. So either way, you either have, it takes a longer time to do a deal,
Mhm.
or you have long term, you pay more theoretically without seller financing for the deal, or you take more risk for the deal. But I don't have a real preference to either one. I think once you have money, it's much easier to do deals with not seller financing, like
Yeah.
much easier. But if you don't have any money, then I think there's plenty of ways for you to negotiate good deals. It's really the difference between upfront pain or long-term pain.
Do you ever do a staged buyout?
Meaning like I pay for it at different
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. The seller stays involved and you're paying them off as you go.
Yes. Yeah, we call it milestone-based
Okay.
acquisitions. So basically, we are doing that in multiple businesses
Right.
currently. So those are one of my favorite ways to buy businesses is if I can have a business where it's a good, strong business, the operator is in place, the operator wants to continue running the business, and I get to be capital for the business plus significant ownership plus distributing equity, and I can help them grow alongside them. And potentially maybe they want to have a buyout in 5 years or something like that because they're looking to retire. Potentially they want to buy out in 10 years. I love those acquisitions. So I have one right now that's more growth based. He doesn't actually have like an exit goal right now. And then we have one where we're buying him out over time as X is hit and they backfill themselves.
Huh. Well, it's now once you acquire a business, your strategy, I'm sure, is you've got form that you follow. I mean, you're probably looking at growth potential, client retention, management team. Do you typically keep the management team in place?
I typically, well, it really depends. If we're buying the business out overall, I want to make sure that some part of the management team is in place because I
Right.
try to not buy turnarounds.
Yeah.
So I want to buy like a healthy, nice growing, kind of steady state business, which means I'm not looking to change everything to a turnaround. If that happens, I probably made a mistake. So
Mhm.
by and large, no, I want them kind of motoring right along. Now, what I do typically do is replace the main operator,
Yeah.
because I think after you sell your business, if we give them a big stake, it's very seldom that they're still engaged
Yeah.
afterwards. They're ready to move on to the next thing. So I sort of believe in replacing the operator, maybe like a number two or something. But I want to have most of the leadership's team stay in place. At least that's the way I do it and teach it.
Yeah. Do you have a number in mind that, year one, I want to have this much more market share, year two, this much more? Was that the path that you guys take?
We basically have two types of acquisitions. We have what I call a business as a bond acquisition, which basically means like we owned a bunch of car washes, and those car washes grew like 3% per year. It was basically
Mhm.
demographic growth. It was like if the demographic of the surrounding area grew, that business grew by 3 or 4% or whatever, almost just like real estate. And that business was great because it was people light, asset heavy, but people light business. And it would just kind of tick along. And those businesses were spread out enough where we weren't doing value add. We were just cash flowing on those things like you would a bond. And then these days, I do more acquisitions that are growth style businesses. So I don't necessarily have a market share percentage that I'm looking for, but
Okay.
I do have financial projections I'm looking for. Like we have a business right now where, I want us to make about $2.5 million next year on the deal, which means that we probably have to grow the company by 30, 32, 33%, something like that, in order for us to do that based on what we did this year. So I'm very, and I like people in the beginning to think about it like it's an income stream. It's an income stream. When you buy a business my way, your goal is you're buying an income stream that pays you, that covers the interest rate for the loan of the business or however you structure the deal, that covers the income of your operator for the business, that covers your income directly to you and covers working capital or growth capital to grow the business or operate the business. And I sort of really focus on this cash flow component of the business.
Cash flow is very important. The client retention. So let's say when you buy a new business, obviously clients are coming with it. What steps do you take to maintain those relationships with the clients and then grow from there?
It's so great. I mean, the best way to grow your current business is to sell your clients more things and more expensive things. And so it's such a key question. We have a ton of strategies. So one of the cool things about Main Street Holding Company, which is our holdco, is we basically took all the operational processes that we've used in our businesses and we turn them into playbooks that we give to our portfolio companies. So when it comes to what we call referrals, reviews, and churn, we have a process that's RRC. How do we get our portfolio companies day one to do things differently? And one of the best things to start with is you always want to have your customers say nice things about you. And so we have a whole process for how do you get people consistently at every single engagement that you have with them to give you a feedback loop and to feel good with magic moments. So an example, for instance, was one of our pool cleaning companies. I like to think about businesses that are quote unquote boring businesses and where can we add a little sexy to them? Where can we Hollywood them up a little bit, right? So in a pool cleaning business, I would get my pool cleaned and I would look out and, there's always like a little paper that they leave that's like, here's your pH balance. We've been here, sign off, whatever. They leave it outside. It would annoy me every time. I'm like, no, I expect you to be here. Like you could text me, now I got to go out to the yard and I got to go over to the other side and I got to grab this paper. I find that very annoying. And yet we kind of needed to do it because our process was that they had to take a picture of the pH balance that they had there. They had to sign a little something and they had to note it, like they had to put it by the pool so that we could put it into our management system to make sure that the techs actually came and cleaned the pool. So it was actually really for the business, not the
Right.
user. So what we decided to do is on the back of that card, the card that the client would see, we would have like 4 or 5 variations, and it would be a ridiculous postcard, like a hot pool boy and a Speedo cleaning up the pool, and it was like, missed you, baby. And then on the back is whatever. So
Right.
what used to annoy me then became this funny, cute little thing, and I was curious, like what was going to be on it each week. And so the customers felt the same way, and now we get a magic moment where customers start to say positive things about their pool cleaning company to other people. When are you ever like, you know what I got? A killer pool cleaning guy. #1 pool cleaner in town. Nobody fucking cares. But we took like one little thing to increase our customers saying nice things about us. And I forget this all the time in business, and we're always reapplying it to our portfolio companies. Make the little moments magical.
You bring your personality to it the way it sounds. And that's huge. I just had Fred Reichel on, and he has a system, net promoter system, and it's all about getting referral business back. And I can see where you've taken that into consideration. You're thinking that, okay, if I can show some personality here, people want to work with people that have a personality and are outgoing and fun. So I'm guessing that you guys put a heavy bit of thought into your referrals, right?
We
Gaining new
do.
business that way.
Very much so. I mean, the referral part of the business is always really, really tough. I mean, I think about
Right.
it for our contrarian community right now. So our business buying group, like think about this. How hard would it be for you to go and tell other people to come learn about business buying with you? Like that is so not a natural part of life. Like most
Right.
people don't even know you could buy a business. So
Right.
how can I get our people to refer other people to come learn this crazy thing with them? And so I really struggled with this in the beginning because I think it's the key to any business is getting your clients to say things nice. It's really the key is this. You want people to buy from you, not once, but twice, then continuously, and you need them to tell some friends. And if you can't get them to do those things, you don't have a business. You have a marketing machine. You have a liability because you will forever be marketing for it. And that's a terrible place to be in. We've had businesses there. So when I thought about this business, I was like, well, how could we get people to share this? And so one of the things we do in the community is we want to highlight our winners. And so in finance, I don't know if they do this in real estate, maybe, but you know how in finance they give like a deal trophy, like a tombstone, a crystal placard to say we
Yeah.
closed this deal. And it's kind of a big deal. Like on Wall Street, when we were, doing big deals, you'd get one. They'd be all on your office. You worked on the Twitter IPO, cool. And it was sort of like a mark of progress. And so we created those for all of our members. So everybody that closes a deal with us at Contrarian Thinking gets a personalized deal marker. We highlight them, we take them up on stage, we tell their story, and we highlight their business. And because of that, then their friends go, "What's this thing? Like, what did you just post that you just bought this? You
Mhm.
bought a business, Cheryl? You've never even run a business. How'd you buy one?" And then they share that and then they bring their friends along. And then increasingly, we're having these events that are mostly just for members, but we're allowing our members to invite friends along with them. And not just any friend, we have to screen them to make sure people are qualified and
Sure.
not
Yep.
crazy people. But I think it's really important that you allow your users to benefit from loving what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit about, when you're bringing management in and bringing other people, where have you had success with integrating the new people with the old people? Because I can imagine that had to be a challenge for you in the beginning.
Yes. I think maybe the best is a story. So one of the first businesses that we integrated back in the day, so we bought the business. We wanted to keep the operator of this business, but we had to replace the management team. The management team was not very strong. And as you can imagine, that's tentative because once you replace like one or two, then everybody's like, who's coming next? Like, whose head's getting chopped next? Is it us? How do you communicate that? Are you truly transparent to say we're going to replace the whole management team? Well, then what happens when they disengage or when they leave? There's like a lot of stress surrounding that. And so in this particular business, we basically sat down the two people on the management team that they weren't even strong enough performers to stay in that role, but we saw a runway for them if we brought in somebody more senior to the company to go over
Right.
them. And we basically said, we need your help, ear to the ground on what's going on with these other people inside of the business. And this is called an inside job. So basically, when you take over a small business, it's really useful to know up front with the owner, who are your key men and women? Who are the key people that, like, with them, without them in the business, you're fucked. And with them in the business, you can do a lot. And so I always try to find my inside job people first and say, hey, we're going to take this over. What do I have to do to get you excited about this? You are that important to me in this business. It usually probably includes a little salary bump. Maybe it includes some upside if they do X, Y, and Z. But once you have those one or two people online, then they know that Andy doesn't really work hard and it doesn't matter if he bitches, but Todd really does, and we need to get Todd on board. And so I think if you're going to buy a business, you've got to make sure you don't come in as some master on high. You got to come in and find who are going to be your advocates and your co-leaders in this business.
Yeah, I agree. I know we're starting to run out of time here, Codie, and I promised you 1 hour. So I want to let's close it on marketing. I think that is the key to any business. You know, you take over this business, probably their marketing wasn't great. Can you really do an in-depth on marketing and what you guys do?
Yeah, you're right. Lots of tech CEOs get focus from people these days. So Naval Ravikant might say, if you create incredible product, you'll never market a day in your life. If you create incredible product, you'll never sell a day in your life. That is true if you are capable of building Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, etc. That is not so true of everyday businesses. In the beginning, your business is probably not going to be that much different than another landscaping business or another roofing business. And that's actually okay. And so I think one, just know it is okay to market. In fact, the best salespeople are chief sales officers. That is what they are in the beginning. And so don't feel bad about needing to sell. In fact, you should feel like other people are missing out because they don't know about your product and service, and you are here to spread the gospel. That should be fine. The second thing is, when it comes to marketing and sales, we teach a 9-step process called 9 Steps to 9 Figures. And one of the first steps is your persona or your avatar. I think a lot of businesses don't actually know who they sell to. And so they can't actually sell well because they're like, we sell landscaping services. Where? In Austin, Texas. Okay, great. To who? To anybody that has a lawn. What kind of lawn? Lawns that are lawny. And so they don't have a lot of particulars, as opposed to we teach our company, for instance, Pinks is a great example, window cleaning company. They have an insane retention rate, renewal rate, and recurring revenue rate. They also are our fastest growing franchise. And the reason why is they nailed their avatar. They're like 2 avatars. One avatar is they're focused on commercial buildings and commercial owners of buildings located in, let's say here, in the Austin Metroplex area, in the Austin urban area.
Mm-hmm.
And their first type of business that they went after was like marquee, what they call, I can't remember the exact word. It's like marquee brand-based businesses. So an example of that would be like any business on South Congress, which is our sort of fancy road in Austin. And so if they're on South Congress, they care about brand, they care about how they're seen, and that is important to the business. And Pinks is like a cool window cleaning company. So like these companies want people to walk by and see our cool window cleaners cleaning there, and that's important to them. And since they nailed that market, they got like every single store on South Congress. And because of that, they got recurring revenue monthly because these are retail companies. So they need to be able to have shiny, squeaky clean window fronts. And then they started going after their avatar in neighborhoods. And the avatar, was particularly dependent on geography. And so I would say you name your avatar. So it might be, hipster Hope, who's a business owner who owns a retail storefront that does at least $1 million a year located in this area. She likes X and Y and Z media companies. She likes to go out and eat at these spots in Austin. And we're that particular with it. And once you know somebody, you stop writing love letters to whom it may concern.
Yeah. Now, do you find that most of the companies you buy are actually tracking their marketing, or they just run marketing out?
Most of the companies, well, let's see. When we buy smaller companies, they're not tracking their marketing. A lot of them are not advertising at all. A lot of
Oh,
these
yeah.
companies don't have social media accounts. Some of them don't even really have working websites. So I would say, companies sub $3 million in sales are often missing a lot of this stuff.
Mm,
Then our bigger companies like Resi Brands, which is the parent company to Pink's, they do it all.
okay.
They're tracking intently. But even those companies, doing tens and tens of millions of dollars a year are less sophisticated than you might think. And so there's lots of room to come in as an operator and professionalize.
I agree. So what's next for Codie? What is she going to do now?
Well, we have this, I think it's all about mainstream millionaires right now. Like the idea is that this book makes people so much money that they can become unemployable. They can be their own boss if they so choose. I'm certainly an unemployable human in many ways. And that we give the big guys a run for their money, that we actually own our corner stores. So my goal is by the end of this year, I want to have created another $100 million in small business owners who have bought businesses. So this isn't me. I don't make any money off these transactions. I just want to track other humans buying these businesses. I think that will feel good at the end of my life to feel like could we have like $1 billion in small businesses bought by us instead of them? That would be really cool. And so that is my mission. And I hope this book teaches people how to become a deal maker, how to make more money, and how to never have to work for somebody you don't want to again.
And I think your timing is perfect because there's a lot of baby boomers that are retiring, and there's businesses, like you said earlier, the kids don't want to run them, so they're coming on the market. So the
Yep.
timing is perfect. Timing is perfect to have this book coming out. Again, we are going to put it up on the website, and I'm going to put it on the link below. So Codie, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks, Joe. I so appreciate you. Thanks for being a supporter of small businesses buying and selling. It's really important.
Absolutely, it's a big part of our business, and I love doing it. So, and for those of you watching, if you could please give us a like, and if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.